White House. But the Watchtower says religions are an obstacle to peace and that they continually meddle in politics. Well, what religion are they talking about? Honestly, do they think the world's stupid, or that they might say that those religious organisations have accumulated too much wealth and property? Well, oh my goodness, if we go into this, the Watchtower, one of the most wealthiest religious organisations on the planet. And I can't help myself, the best one on this subject again is Lloyd Evans. I'm going to just have to go with the best, and we'll put on his take on the wealth of the Watchtower Bible and Practice Society.
We have looked forward to this next fiscal year and projected the expenditures for all of the theocratic initiatives we are scheduling. In doing the math, we found that the amount of money flowing out will be much greater than the amount of money that we have coming in at this time. We just felt that you, dear brothers and sisters, needed to be made aware of these expenditures that we're facing in the coming months and years. The governing body wanted to make you aware of the financial needs in the world field. And we are confident that with this knowledge, your appreciative hearts will move you to do what you can to support the work at hand. Yes, we can honor Jehovah with our valuable things, including the financial support of true worship.
I grew up in the Jehovah's Witness religion, and it was always understood that the kingdom work was financed not by begging, not by bowls being handed round, not by soliciting money, but by people freely giving without any coercion so that the organisation could continue. And those words by Charles Taze Russell, that, well, if God can't provide, then we'll take that as a signal that we should suspend publication. That was always the principle that I understood as a Jehovah's Witness. So you can imagine how astonished I was when in May 2015 we saw this JW broadcasting episode. I've had a lot to say about it on this channel. I'm sure you will very likely be familiar with it, especially if you are either a Jehovah's Witness or a former Jehovah's Witness. But this video is not going to be so much about the begging, about Watchtower's desperation for funds. It's going to be more about the underhanded way in which Watchtower is setting about milking ordinary witnesses for money. In particular, I'm going to be talking about how Watchtower has betrayed the trust of ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses it claims to serve by making millions through its congregation merger program. Now, it's going to be a little complicated to describe this whole thing. Hopefully, by the end of this video, having seen the material I'm going to show you, you'll have a better picture of exactly what it is I'm talking about. But just to give you some idea, I thought I would open with an analogy, and I'm deliberately making this analogy so that you can understand this whether you've been involved with Jehovah's Witnesses or not. Imagine that you went to a church, you were a member of a local congregation, and you would regularly go to your local church, and your church came under the oversight of an umbrella denomination, so that when you go to church meetings, you would make a donation to the larger umbrella denomination, but you would also give perhaps generously to your local church, because you want to make sure that your church has enough money, not just for everyday expenses, utilities, electricity, gas, whatever it is that the church needs to keep functioning as a building, but it also has some money saved away for a rainy day in case it needs major renovations in the future, or perhaps even a complete rebuild. So you give generously to your local church in addition to giving money to the umbrella denomination. And what that means to you as a congregation member is that when you sit in your church and you look around, you see the windows, you see the wallpaper, you see the chairs, you see the sound system, everything around you, you are contributing towards. Or perhaps your parents or grandparents, if they too were members of this church, they had all contributed to the structure that you see around you, along with all of the furnishings, along with everything that's necessary to make this a comfortable place of worship that you can attend in your local community. Now imagine that the larger umbrella denomination tells the congregation, you know what, you guys don't need to contribute quite so much to your local church because we're going to take care of all of the renovation and building needs in the future. So you guys just need to basically take care of your electricity bills, the usual utilities that you need to pay for, but you never need to worry about, say, if your church needs a new roof, or it needs major renovation work, or maybe even a rebuild. We will take care of that, and all we ask in return is that you give us the money that you would have been giving to the church itself, and any surplus funds that your church is keeping for a rainy day, the church will send all of that to us, and we will assume responsibility for the upkeep and maintenance and potential building needs of your church. Now, on the face of it, this may seem like quite a good deal. The larger umbrella denomination is assuming responsibility for your church so that you and your congregation members no longer need to worry about it. But there's a rather obvious problem here, and that's that the larger umbrella denomination has other things to think about than purely your building and its upkeep and making sure that you and your fellow congregation members are meeting in your locality in a nice, well-kept, well-maintained building. What's to stop them from one day saying, actually, you know what, we don't want you meeting in this location anymore. We'd actually appreciate if you drive another half hour or another 40 minutes to another location where we are also maintaining that building. We'll merge you with that congregation and we will sell your church and take the proceeds for ourselves. That, in a nutshell, is what Watchtower is doing with Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm going to do my very best to document the timeline of how that has happened in this video. And I need to start off with a letter that was sent. I've talked about this letter before, by the way, and I will have links to this letter and another letter in the description below. But it all began with a letter to all bodies of elders dated March 29th, 2014. And what this letter meant was that congregations basically had the last vestige of their autonomy torn from them. And it was presented to the congregations as though, listen, don't worry, we will take on responsibility for your upkeep, for your maintenance and building requirements. The main part of the letter reads, in harmony with the principle at 2 Corinthians 8 verses 12 to 14, congregations will now be asked to pool their resources worldwide to support the construction of theocratic facilities wherever they are needed. Congregations and assembly halls will no longer be asked to repay a loan, and use of the separate contribution box labelled Kingdom Hall Construction Worldwide has been discontinued. Instead, all congregations will have the opportunity to support Kingdom Hall and Assembly Hall construction worldwide by resolving to make a monthly donation from congregation funds. And at the end of the paragraph it says, from now on, all funding for approved projects will be provided by the branch office from the funds that have been donated by you, dear brothers and sisters. And that was the key part. Watchtower was taking money that would otherwise have been focused purely on the local Kingdom Hall, and they were saying, well, we will accept responsibility for your Kingdom Hall, but you know what? We get to decide. We get to prioritize how that money is spent and on what building that money is spent. And that's the crucial part. Now, what was really underhanded about this letter was that ordinary witnesses will just have been read this letter. This is page 1. There was also a page 2, 3, and 4 to this letter. And in bold, in the first paragraph, it says, this postscript should not be read to the congregation, and this letter should not be posted on the information board. And that's crucial because there were some parts of the letter that were really dubious. And I'm going to come to one of those dubious points later on in this video. But just to give you one example, at the end of the letter, there was a section headed surplus funds. And this said, is it necessary to save congregation funds for future construction or major renovation projects? No. While it may be practical to keep sufficient funds in the congregation account to care for minor renovations or repairs, there is no need to save funds for major renovations or repairs, since these projects will be financed by the branch office as needed. And then later in the same section, it says, periodically the body of elders may also review the balance of the congregation funds to determine if surplus cash should be sent to the branch office as a donation. The recommendation for such a donation should be presented to the congregation as a one-time resolution. So what this part of the letter was essentially saying, and bear in mind that ordinary witnesses were prohibited from seeing this part of the letter, it was saying, listen, you send us your surplus cash that you were squirreling away for a rainy day, because we're now taking care of all of your major renovation and building needs, so you don't need that cash. You can send that to us. Now, there was actually some confusion after this letter was sent to elders, and Watchtower ended up sending out another letter. The letter was dated May 12th, 2014, because it turned out that congregations were saying, well, how much money are we talking about? When we say surplus, do you have a figure in mind of how much money we're allowed to keep? And I'll give you an example from the letter. It says, if the body of elders believes there is a need, an additional reserve of funds up to $5,000 per auditorium may also be held in this account. If these amounts have not already been established, the body of elders should meet as soon as possible to do so. And then later on in the letter, it refers to this $5,000 amount again. It says, therefore, branch office approval will be needed for 1, any new property purchase or sale, 2, any new construction project, 3, the addition of any new element or feature to the existing Kingdom Hall, or 4, maintenance work that will cost more than $5,000 per auditorium, because of course congregations have been told, well, you're allowed to keep $5,000. That was the amount that was given to them. Everything else above $5,000 that was in a congregation's account was to be sent to Watchtower. And bear in mind that ordinary witnesses would not have been able to read this, because this was a letter to all bodies of elders, and this particular letter specifying the $5,000 amount was not to be read out at the Kingdom Hall meeting. Now, with all this in mind, and bearing in mind that all of this happened in 2014, I want you to take a fresh look at what Stephen Lett said about this new arrangement in the March 2015 JW Broadcasting episode.
We also have heard from circuit overseers and others that some of the brothers and sisters may have a misconception about some of the recent policy changes that have been instituted. For example, all congregations that had a Kingdom Hall or Assembly Hall loan to pay off were informed that their mortgages were canceled. Now, if you think about it, that is amazing, isn't it? All their loans were canceled. Can you imagine a bank telling homeowners that all their loans were canceled and that they should merely send in to the bank each month whatever they can afford? Only in Jehovah's organization could such a thing happen.
Only that's not what happened. As it says in the part of the March 29th, 2014 letter, that ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses were literally prohibited from reading for themselves. It says, the elders in congregations currently making loan repayments would likely propose a resolution that is at least the same amount as the current monthly loan repayment. Stephen Lett, a governing body member, is here straight up lying to ordinary witnesses by telling them that the loans were cancelled, and even giving an analogy to that effect. A more precise analogy would be a bank telling homeowners that their loans are cancelled, but that they should still carry on sending the same amount of money that they were sending previously. And if we want to be really precise, this bank would also contact homeowners who weren't paying off loans and tell them to start sending in money anyway, as though they were loan customers. The same paragraph says, the elders in congregations without loans, or those having standing resolutions to support Kingdom Hall construction worldwide, should take a confidential survey of all publishers to determine the amount of the new resolution. This can be done by passing out slips of paper to be filled out anonymously by the publishers, indicating how much they are able to contribute monthly toward local congregation expenses, including the resolution to support Kingdom Hall and Assembly Hall construction worldwide. Bottom line, Stephen Lett's characterization of the new arrangement for Kingdom Hall construction was entirely misleading.
However, according to some of our circuit overseers, some of us took this to mean that the organization had a surplus of funds, and thus took this action, as if the loans did not need to be reimbursed. Could this misconception have affected the amount that some have chosen to donate each month? In actuality, the mortgages were canceled so as not to be a hardship on some congregations and circuits, but that by means of an equalizing, your surplus at the present time might offset their need, so that their surplus might also offset your deficiency, that there may be an equalizing. Just as it is written, the person with much did not have too much, and the person with little did not have too little. So that was the scriptural basis for canceling all loan repayments. It was not because the organization had a large surplus of funds and thus could, quote, afford to cancel these mortgages. As explained at the time, it was to equalize the reimbursement of such expenditures over the entire brotherhood. Some businessmen in the secular world might think this was a disastrous policy change. However, we know the spirit of Jehovah's faithful servants. We all feel privileged to be able to help the growing brotherhood to have comfortable places to meet and praise Jehovah.
Actually, unscrupulous businessmen would probably hugely admire this policy change and do something like it themselves if they thought they stood a chance of getting away with it. What Watchtower...
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.